Okay, well, okay, so we're live with John Park. I think a man who needs no introduction. One of the best artists working in the industry, in my opinion. Amazing painter, amazing designer. John can do everything. John has worked on honestly so many movies I could never list them all, from Transformers to Avatar to you name it. He also runs a school based in Los Angeles called Brainstorm, which used to have lessons in person. Although I'm pretty sure that they move all operations online, right, due to the current situation. But normally they have lessons in person. So John today is going to do a painting demo, and then we're also going to take questions from anyone in the audience. As usual, please use the Q&A channel. If you also have any issues, by the way, do not DM me, please. Use the Q&A channel. We're going to be actually taking questions while John is painting, not at the end. So please feel free to sort of start typing right away. We're going to give John a little bit of just a couple of minutes to warm up and start his painting. And then I'm going to start reading all of the questions that you guys have for John. So you can just start to type away. With that said, I'll thanks again, John, for doing this. And it's to you now.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for the awesome introduction. Thanks for joining me today at this live stream. Thanks, Gav, and everyone else, CG Corps, for inviting me. This is so awesome. I'm not too familiar with Discord, and I'm getting a little bit more familiar, and I absolutely love this platform. The more I use it, so hopefully, I could do more of these in the future. What I have planned for you guys is I wanted to kind of give you a little insight in terms of how I do a lot of my personal paintings. And I'll just kind of run through an example here of an image that I did. This right here was a study. And I am a really big sucker for studies. I love kind of warming up and starting my day, just doing these warm-ups here. And it's a great way to kind of start your creative day without necessarily having to go 0 to 100 miles per hour. And so I want to kind of show you guys how I approach this image here. I basically work in a very formulaic fashion, especially with these types of paintings. And I start off with a very graphic approach. It almost looks kind of, it looks very abstract. And I think this is something that is, at this phase, it only really makes sense to me because of how I'm blocking out the volumes. But I generally block everything out in terms of like light, medium, darks, and it's just a graphic silhouette. Let me turn this thing off here. And then what I do is I start to kind of build upon the graphic breakups here, and I start going into a much more internal I guess like graphic design on the shapes here, and that's kind of where it goes into this phase. I'll go exactly over all of these steps in the actual demo today, but I just want to give you guys a little bit of a preview of what I'm going to be covering today. Once you establish a really nice black and white graphic painting, like this is a great way to establish whether or not your painting reads, just in terms of value. And also a great way to double check if your lighting and all your edges and all that fancy brushstroke stuff looks good, right? If it looks pretty good at this phase, then we're ready to move on to color. And that's kind of where I use a lot of the layers here as alpha masks. And I basically lock the layers, and I basically convert it into full color. So I'm going to show you guys how I go from basically this step 1, 2, and 3. So as I paint, don't hesitate to ask any questions. I'll try my best to answer any questions along the way. If it's a very complex question where it requires me to do a side demo, Maybe I'll try to squeeze that in towards the end of the demo. But yeah, well, yeah, let's just jump straight into it. So I'm going to start off with this kind of image. I'm going to do my own composition because I've already done this study, so I kind of have like a visual, some sort of visual familiarity and idea that I have in mind. And the way I like to start is I'm going to grab this image here and I'm going to convert it into black and white. I just want to focus purely on the graphic design. I create a new layer here, and with this layer I'm going to go ahead and make a selection here, and I'm going to turn this into a mask. The reason being is that when I'm painting, I don't want to go outside of this this canvas space. So it allows me to just think about the graphic design and allows me to just block in all of my silhouette shapes internally. A great way to start if you guys are doing these imaginary, I guess, landscapes and paintings is just do a quick sketch that kind of helps establish kind of the general, I guess, general like art direction that you want to go with. So like I have like maybe some like rocks or something, and I'm going to do the world's most shittiest sketch here because I'm not going to show this to my art director. I'm not going to show it to anyone really, but it's just a roadmap for myself in order for me to block in all of these elements. Now I'm going to deviate away from the study. I'm going to do my own composition, and I'm just thinking about like kind of the rocks here and some of these other elements that can make for a unique setup here. If you guys need to use references while painting, I highly encourage it. It's something that I always tell a lot of the guys that that take classes with me. It's like, you know, always use reference when you're starting out. Build that visual library, build that confidence, and then once you're ready, then go ahead and dive into something that's a lot more imaginary and just open in terms of like your own interpretation. So I like to kind of just block things out compositionally here, and you know, I'm just kind of improvising based on what I see. A lot of it is going to still be the same subject matter. I like to generally not deviate too far away, especially when I'm doing these kind of like pseudo studies here, where it's thematically the same. Let's go ahead and erase that. So this is kind of like my block out. See, this looks really bad, right? I would not share this at all, but it's a really good roadmap, a starting place for me. Start blocking out a lot of the graphic shapes. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to pick like a medium gray value, and this is just to help me establish a lot of the graphic silhouette shapes. So I'm using this really coarse brush here. It's kind of like this, I don't know, like this weird round chalk brush. But I just like the look and feel of it. I think I got this one from Jama's brush tool preset. It's either Jama's or Jamie Jones. But those guys have like some of the nicest brushes. So I'm using this to kind of block out just my shapes. And again, this line, the sketch here, it's going to act as like my roadmap. I want to make sure that I don't, that I try to stay relatively close to this drawing here, so that, you know, I'm not deviating away from what I planned out. I don't mean to be too prescriptive when I paint. I know that a lot of people have different methods and approaches, but you know, when it comes to learning, and I'm just trying to understand the subject matter and understand how to execute really nice and clear design choices, or shape choices, I'd rather call it. I like to make sure that I have a general, I guess, plan of attack before I get into, you know, the more complex areas with like color and all that stuff. Another thing that I always try to remind myself is that, you know, I know that, you know, the art community, we're very much into this this ideology of like trying to do work really fast. That's one thing that I try to really tell myself is like, it's okay, you know, let's just slow down. Let's slow down and try to learn. And so that's something that I try to remind myself in order to just execute, you know, the best image that I can for myself. I do allocate about, you know, roughly an hour to 2 hours to do like personal sketches for myself. But if I have more time, I'd love to, you know, put in like 3-4 hours, you know, to do these types of like studies or paintings. So let's go ahead and block all this stuff out. This is kind of like what I'm thinking in the back could be like more additional rocks and all sorts of stuff, activity that's happening here. I'm thinking like it'd be cool to have this like waterfall continue on, like echoing a lot of what's already in the reference here. And I'm thinking graphically, I'm thinking about just kind of the light and dark shapes. I guess as I'm painting, if there's any questions that we want to start collecting.
Yeah, I can start, John. So the first question is from, I'm sorry, I might butcher a bunch of names, from Rushil. It says, how to practice making good shapes. Also, what makes a good shape?
Damn, that's a good question. How to practice making good shapes and what makes a good shape. I think that's a very subjective question, because I think shapes are something that it's not going to be universally agreed upon. But I think one thing that makes generally good shapes is really good proportions, right? So you always want to make sure you have large, medium, small proportions. So not to deviate away from this demo, but like if we had like a birthday cake here, you always want to make sure that there's this this kind of range where you have large, medium, and small. And this is really going to help make sure that you have kind of that dynamism and that balance. And so if you have like a large shape here, if you have a repetitive large shape, what happens is that it starts to get really monotonous. It starts to get very predictable and samey, right? So it's more dynamic when you switch it up and you start to go like, well, what if I had a small shape here and a medium-sized shape? And it starts to really break up the monotonous, the evenness of everything that we start to compose. Now, if it's something more specific, whether you're using like a circle or like triangle, you still want to make sure that you want to maintain kind of that nice proportional balance of large, medium, small, right? So it's really about proportions. Now, if there's an even more specific question in terms of like how do you make awesome silhouettes and stuff, I think that's very subjective to, you know, what it is that you're trying to achieve. Whether it's a let's say if it's like some sort of like rock or something, you know, this can be a successful shape, but it depends on whether or not, like, you know, are you trying to go a little bit more volcanic and more fantasy-like? This can also be a very successful shape. But as you start to compose everything in a scene, you want to make sure that it has kind of the balance of like large, medium, small, right? And that's what's always going to create this nice kind of balance and dynamics of like of the shape. So I hope that answers that question. It's a very good question. It's also a really tough question because there's not one specific answer to that. I think the one thing that I did to get better at, you know, my shape sensibility is actually doing a lot of studies of a lot of different subject matter. And so it helped me to kind of really broaden my own visual library so that, you know, I'm not always used to painting the same things.
That's a great answer. One more question from Tensor Sensei is asking, can you talk a bit about brush economy?
So brush economy, from what I understand, and again, I'm going to give you guys my subjective answer because I'm not a traditional painter. If you ask me to pick up if you ask me to pick up like an actual brush and mix colors, I'm probably going to give you some kindergarten crayon looking piece of artwork. I'm like the worst at it. But in terms of what I understand in a digital sense is that brush economy is all about the frequency of detail. So it's almost like if you have an image, let's say there's an image of a table, and let's say there's like, I don't know, like an apple or something. And let's say you take a photograph of this, there's a very clear focal point, and that focal point is going to focus in on the subject matter, which is the apple, right? So that's a focal point. Anything that's outside of the focal point starts to lose definition. It starts to lose that clarity. So the way I like to think about it is this. As I'm painting, anything that's outside of my focal point, my brush strokes are going to be really broad. So broad brush strokes outside of focal points. As it starts to get closer to the focal point, my brush strokes start to get more specific, more detailed, right? Because I'm getting closer to the focus. And as you get right onto the target, onto the subject matter, I'm going to have the most amount of brush strokes. So what does this represent? This represents the use of creating a very economical way of preserving and controlling your details, right? In a way that, anything that's not really in the focus, you are allowed to go very loose. You're allowed to go very expressive and just kind of do broad stroke ideas. But as you start to get closer to your subject, which is, say, in the center, you want to preserve all of that energy, all of that, those brush strokes into this area, this central area. And what that's going to do, it's going to create a natural focal point. It's going to create a natural brush economy in which it's going to make your painting not look so, it's not going to make it look so focused everywhere, right? And that's what economy really, to my understanding, that's what brush economy serves. So hopefully that was, and I do apologize if my answers are like hella robotic, but if it sounds like way too like textbook, but I want to make sure that, I don't give too much of an open, like loose answer here.
I think you're answering to everything perfectly. Okay, one more question from Nova. Is asking, for novice artists, would you recommend tackling multiple fundamentals or a single one, such as values, comp, shape, language, with this type of study?
Oh man, that's another good question. I would recommend, if I was starting over again, there's so much crap out there that you got to focus on, especially as a beginner. I would focus on just getting really good at like one or two fundamental practices. Like, for example, if you're focusing on like perspective, just get really good at perspective. So that way you don't have to worry about it later on. If you're focusing on like lighting and value, just focus only on that. Mainly because it's kind of like, the way I like to think about fundamentals, it's like learning how to play an instrument. Anytime you start picking up a brand new, like if you're learning environments and you're learning composition, to me that's like learning how to play one specific instrument. When you start to play, when you start to learn like things like character design or other foundation related things, it's kind of like picking up another type of instrument. So my recommendation is get really good at one instrument, understand the principles and the philosophy behind that, get really familiar before you hop onto the next thing. It's a lot easier.
By the way, let me know if you kind of want me to keep like sort of shooting questions one after another, or if you want to focus on the painting. It's up to you.
Yeah, I guess I can just, whatever questions pop in. Anything that doesn't require me to pause and do like a side demo.
Yeah.
So I can just continue working on this.
Sure. Yeah. So one more question from Alex Sky. He's asking, what is the minimum set of works that should be present in the portfolio of a concept designer that wants to work for films?
The minimum set of works, I would say, I don't know if there's like a number, like a specific number of pieces. I know that a lot of other artists have different opinions about that, but for me, I think what helps get a really good shot in terms of working in film is showing your range, your thematic range. And what I mean by that is, like, let's say you are working, let's say your portfolio has predominantly like sci-fi stuff. It's probably good to not do more sci-fi related pieces. It's probably really beneficial to kind of, expand on that and do like, or not expand, like diversify and do like something that's more, I would say more like Western or like historical, like just to kind of break it up a bit, because it starts to get really repetitive. And I think, a lot of films, they're not always going to have the same, theme or subject, right? There's always going to be different types of movies. So a production designer, or in that case, an art director, would want to know whether or not you are capable of executing different themes, right? So that's the one thing that I would recommend. If you want a specific number, what is a good range of pieces to have in your portfolio? I would say, like, try to have at least 5 to maybe 8 pieces that represent your understanding in that subject matter. I don't think you need 100 paintings, but also I think you need more than just one image.
Awesome. One more question from Peter. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say Peter. Can you point out some examples of shapes, proportions, leading lines, or other design ideas that you're working towards in specific composition? Are you conscious of this, or is it mostly intuition?
It is intuition, because of the studies I'm doing. I would say, like, there is a lot of other, resources and books out there that do a better job of, really formalizing that. But again, I'm always thinking about kind of the general ratio of, where my highest detail is here. This is going to be my focal point. Anything outside of this area is going to get less attention in terms of shape, and also in terms of like breakup, right? So I'm going to have the most amount of highest amount of frequency. And when I look at my photo, it does the same thing too. Like, this has a lot of information here. So that's kind of what I want to try to represent the image to reflect a lot of those same like visual principles here. I do apologize if, if I don't give like the most academic answer. I think when it comes to like creating certain types of artworks, like my choices in terms of why did I put this stick here is purely intuitive. I'm just kind of like testing it out. I'm like, oh, it might look cool. Does it help break it up in an interesting way? Possibly. Does it, if I add this here, what does it really do to my composition? Well, it actually acts as a framing device that might focus, that might put a lot of attention and focus there. And you guys can see like how long I'm spending on this phase, right? It seems really like overkill. Like, a lot of people might be like, dang, dude, get on with the next part. But a lot of this right here is really the foundation of the image. It's kind of like the it's really like kind of the like the bones of the image, right? Before I start adding in more detail. And so let's go ahead and jump into the next phase. So I'm going to go ahead and group everything. Just title this 1, 2. I'm going to start working on phase 2. For phase 2, I have everything separated here. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and create a layer, clipping layer. And I'm going to start painting inside each of these elements. I want to start thinking about just kind of like the lights and darks. And there's a lot of really nice details here in my reference, and I'm going to reference that. And I just want to think pure graphic design. I'm thinking about everything in terms of like light and dark. I'm not worried about the highlights or anything. I just only want to focus in on the shadows. I think for me, that's going to be probably the most important part of this exercise, is just making sure that I capture a really solid shadow shape here.
One other question from Riddle. It says, what are some common mistakes you see when people emulate these sort of studies?
I think the most common mistake that I see is biting off more than you can chew is one. You know, like I see a lot of students who will try to do the most complicated image. That's never a really good place to start. And I understand why, because it's kind of like, you know, there's this natural thought process of like, well, if I do the most complex thing, I'm gonna learn the most out of it. It's actually not true. If you kind of slow down and you do something really simple, you'll actually learn a lot more, even though it's a much more simpler image. I know it sounds it sounds kind of like counterproductive, or it sounds really weird to say that, but you actually learn the most when you keep your studies really simple. So that's one major mistake that I see in some student work. You know, when they try to approach or do like studies, you know. So as I'm blocking everything out, I'm just thinking pure, like very harsh graphic design. Like, what does that mean? It means that like a lot of my shadow shapes are very, they're not like, they don't have like a lot of volumetric form. It's just like very graphic. It almost looks like I just got like a dark black marker, and I started just like really inking this thing, you know, very aggressively. And I just want to get like a lot of the darker areas, you know, just to kind of like pronounce that stuff, right? Now from here, once you feel like you're like, okay, I got all the elements in place, then you can start thinking about like, okay, well, what if this rock actually turns? What if it like subtly rotates? Then you can start to soften that up. And this is where you want to start introducing like soft edges, right? Like a little bit more volume to that form. And I'm using my smudge brush here to really help just create a little bit of like a little bit of a transitional edge. And you can do all sorts of stuff. You can use like brushes to do that. You can use smudge brush. Sometimes I like to mix it up, and I like to use like something that has a little bit more like a spackle texture to it. I'll even use a brush that has like a big stamp to kind of block in like textures. And I'll use that in conjunction with a smudge brush. I'll just kind of like smudge it around, and it's not always going to be perfect. So even at this stage, you'll see me block things in and do a lot of editing too.
Earl Matita is asking, I would like to ask about the use of basically painterly concept designs, because he sees a lot of concept art that is highly detailed and photoreal, while your work is very painterly. So he's asking, I guess, about that.
So professionally, when I work in studio, a lot of what's going to be asked is a lot more the photorealistic stuff. Now, and I'm going to say that very, it's not going to be universally true for every project. It's based on per project, per studio, right? It depends on like which studio you work for and what the goal of the project is, right? So some projects are going to require a much more photorealistic finish, depending on like whether it's a movie or like a AAA game, kind of like The Last of Us. I thought The Last of Us was beautifully executed, from concept art all the way down to the final production of the actual game. Now, if the artwork in that was done in a very painterly fashion, I think there'd be a lot of issues because of the fact that it needs to translate properly. It needs to translate to how it's going to reflect in the final product. So for me, when I do very painterly based things, granted, a lot of it is done for personal use, but if I'm doing it for professional use, then that means the product, the final project or product, it's going to lend itself to be a little bit more less realistic or maybe more stylized, right? So in that case, you know, it is visually more accepted to do more painterly based stuff because there's a lot more room for interpretation, right? I think when it comes to more like photorealistic, you know, products like movies, AAA photorealistic games, it is more productive to do something that is photorealistic because that's going to help the art department. It's going to help the production. It's going to help a lot of the 3D modelers. It might not be your cup of tea, and you're like, and you know, most people might be like, man, but I'm going to get, you know, not going to get as many likes on ArtStation or Facebook. It doesn't matter about that. It's really about, you know, are you helping your production with your art? You know, your art, you are a part of a team, and so if my members need something that's more photorealistic to help problem solve, you know, the game or help problem solve a level, I'm going to give them something that's very photorealistic, something that's going to help them to navigate to a much more, you know, successful a successful route. Sorry, that was like a long-winded answer.
Oh, that was a great answer. One more question from Rochelle. Where do you find these really good references that are not processed? I guess talking about the picture.
Oh, this stuff? Oh man, Google. Such a shit answer. Sorry. Where do you Google? Honestly, like I'll find something on Pinterest and then I'll basically do a like a reverse search, and I found a ton that I've like collected over the past couple months. And sometimes I'll find like a photograph, you know, from like, I don't know, like my friends like Facebook, you know, feed. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And other times I'll look at stuff like this and I'll go, wow, that's cool, but maybe it's not really beautiful on all parts of the image. Maybe it's only really awesome, like maybe right here. So I'm taking a photo within a photo, right? Or referencing a composition within that area. So like something like this really helps me to, you know, curate and get like a really nice area in that photograph. So I'll do a lot of that at times if I'm not finding like the perfect image.
Steven asks, how do you go about choosing a mentor?
Choosing a mentor for art, right?
Yes, yeah, I guess it's a mentor for art, yeah.
So if I was starting off in the beginning, I would be very, very selective about who I want to go under a mentorship, and that's, you know, it's not necessarily have to do with like the school you choose. It has to do with the artist, right? So try to learn under an artist that you really admire, and also that you resonate with in terms of like, you know, the style of work, right? I think to me that's a much more honest way of picking a mentor. I think I say, like, you know, when you're picking a mentor, like, try not to, like, if they're more than just a teacher, You know, they're really kind of like an art coach and a life coach for you. You know, they're gonna really help you with all aspects, especially if they are a very true mentor. I think when it comes to like taking classes, I think you can just take classes from anyone because it's just about information, right? It's about just like leveling up and learning a certain trade or certain skill. But a mentor is like, it's a lot more personal. It's like, you know, you want to make sure that, you know, you are under the guidance of someone that you really respect, and that, you know, a lot of the philosophies kind of align, like your own personal values and stuff, and art values and taste. And so, like, for example, like if you want to learn how to paint like Craig Mullins and you're like, yes, I want to be like that guy, go mentor under him, you know? Like I would do it in a heartbeat. Mainly because what I strive for is more aesthetically in line with what he does professionally, right? So I would basically pick mentors like that. And that's kind of the way I would go about it if I were to do it all over again. Hopefully that answered that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Let me know if there's any other
Yeah.
like thoughts or questions.
Yeah, so there's don't worry, there's a lot. So Arlan is asking, what was your experience with confidence in relation to your art? Where did it mostly come from? Do you think it always needs to be based on feedback from peers?
And that's another really good question. You know, the thing I think we all struggle with as artists is confidence, right? I mean, and we have like good days and bad days. We have like days where you know, you just feel like you're on top of the world and everyone's responding to your work, and then there's those moments of doubt where you just feel like shit, you know, and it's just like everything that you're producing, or you might have even like an off day and you're just not in a good place. I think what helped stabilize a little bit more confidence is not necessarily the reaction from peers, even though I know that that might seem like a big factor, but it's really about for me, it really came from like personal work. You know, like am I really happy? Am I content with, you know, a lot of the personal work that I've been doing, or personal exploration? I think that's why it's important to do personal projects. For me, that was a big game changer to help rebuild my confidence, because I think prior to that, I was always looking for affirmation. I was always looking for approval from like my coworkers, my peers, and everything. Like, you know, you go into work every day, or you go into the studio or school, and you know, you wanna put your best foot forward, and you want to be like, look what I did, guys, woo! And then sometimes you're going to get mixed reactions. You might get people who are like over the top and excited about your work, and you might get a lot of, you know, not so great reactions. You might get people who are like, meh, that's not that good. And it's going to really hit your, you know, your confidence, you know, and your self-esteem. And, you know, you're just going to feel very weird about, you know, your own, yourself as an artist, and your own value. And that's where I kind of try to, you know, really separate those things, right? I think it's important to know your own self-worth. And I know it's hard to like put that, it's hard to apply that in the beginning, because, you know, you're trying to get a lot of validation from your peers, and, you know, trying to make sure that, you know, like people respond to your work positively. But I think for me, I got a lot more confident in my art when I started doing my own stuff, you know? And it was just about tracking my own progression, if that makes sense. Like I started to not really care so much about like how many likes I get on an image, but I started to track my own progression in terms of, you know, how much better did I get in the past 6 months of painting? You know, am I better now? Am I better today than I was like yesterday? Or am I better today? Did I make far more improvements in the past week? You know, and if that's showing progress, then I know that I feel like I'm improving. You know, despite what my peers may say, you know, because there's so many factors. Like, you know, your peers are really going to react to things that resonate with them, and it's not their fault really, that, you know, they may or may not like your work, but I think it starts to subconsciously really like mess with your own, you know, your own like personal value and like how you feel as at the end of the day. So I try to remove that as much as possible. I try to be, yeah, I don't know, that's kind of my own take on it.
So yeah, no, you're giving great answers. Don't worry, dude. Um, so okay, let me see. Okay, one question from Megan. Okay, so it says, I've always struggled with striking a balance between using original ideas and sticking to historical slash technological accuracy, etc., while designing. It feels like I constantly overdo either, which really weakens my designs and make them less memorable. How would you suggest overcoming this issue?
So sorry, can you repeat that one more time? I just want to make
Yeah,
sure I get it properly.
yeah. It says it basically says I struggle with striking a balance between using original ideas and sticking to or sticking to the historical slash technological accuracy of, I guess, of said ideas. It says while designing, so it feels like they constantly overdo either, which they feel like weakens their design and makes them less memorable. So I think it's probably the struggle between coming up with original ideas, but making sure that they work within like historical or technological sort of accuracy. So what
I
is
see.
the
Like what is like a good balance, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, and that's a really good question. I think that's like one of my favorite questions because it's so damn hard. It's like I I I I think that's going to be a very ongoing, not struggle, but it's going to be an ongoing thing that we're gonna as artists and creatives, like we're gonna continue to, you know, strive for, is like that perfect balance and making memorable designs and making successful designs, right? So I think a lot of it has to do with you know, the parameters that we set for ourselves, and what that means is that, you know, when you're doing something that is um, like say I'm like working on like a sci-fi movie, right? And sci-fi is in as a genre, it is so broad. I don't even know what the hell it means, to be honest, because it can mean Blade Runner, or it can mean iRobot. It can mean, you know, Mad Max. Like that's considered somewhat sci-fi fantasy, but it has so much broad range where just that term alone is like it's a very daunting term, right? And so like the one thing that I try to really think about in terms of, you know, one, making a very memorable design, but two, making it so that it's not so intimidating and scary, is that start off with something that has very strict parameters, right? So for example, if you are designing something, if you're working on a project, it might be a lot easier and a lot more successful to work on something. Um, Say, for example, like let's say if you were to um, redesign Egypt, right? As an example, say you redesign Egypt, but you're gonna say, okay, well, it's not like completely sci-fi in the fact that everything in Egypt has changed, but what would Egypt look like if people started to build on top of the existing pyramids, right? And you need to see at least, you know, 70% of the original Egyptian ruins and architecture, but 30% can be something that's more modern or slightly more futuristic, right? And what does that mean? It means new construction. It means roads. It means areas where you can have a little bit more greenery and like gardens and stuff that makes it feel more lived in, right? So I would kind of start there and then slowly build up from that point on. And that's kind of the way I like to approach, you know, sci-fi or fantasy design, especially if it's you know, like if the subject matter seems really daunting, stick with something that, or start off with something that feels less abstract, you know. Try to like slowly work your way up. It's like doing a warm up, right? So, or like if you're running or something, like you don't wanna just set yourself with a goal of like running, 20 miles. Like let's build it up. Let's run 1 mile and just see how it goes, right? So that's the same kind of like mental philosophy where I like to think, let's go ahead and start off with just a little bit more of a simple concept, and then alter it slightly, right? And then based on that, you want to make sure that if Egyptian is your theme, um, you know that it's already iconic because of the location. The question is, how do you build upon that, and how do you make it so that it really feels narratively interesting, right? And that's kind of where I would say, like, think about it in terms of gradually introducing like a new idea on top of something that we all understand and know.
Awesome. Um, One question from Ian. It says, related to the edges variation, can you talk a bit about edges? Do you have a minimum number of steps from soft edges to hard edges?
With edges, generally, I mean, a lot of my stuff tends to look very like paper cutout at first. But what I like to do, and I kind of like to, like, I'll start to break up edges around this space, but my understanding of edges is it not only helps to promote a focal point, but it acts as a portal. And this is my good friend King Lee talked about this. He talked about edges in terms of like, if you're starting off here, like in the canvas, how can your eye move around the visual, or how can your eye move around this space in a way where it feels like it can enter and exit these areas just only using edges? Well, when I look at this, if my eye is starting off here, and this line is purely abstract, by the way. It doesn't have to even be this. It can be any random ass shape. But what I like to do is I like to introduce this concept and create little portals or openings for these forced, lost, and found edges. So like here, I may create a lost edge because I want my eye to be able to enter and exit here, right? Go out, enter, and maybe enter onto this log, and then maybe exit somewhere out here. Maybe enters over here, exits out here, goes over here, maybe enters and exits out here, right? So it's really, I really see edges as kind of a way, as a visual portal for the viewer to kind of navigate the picture plane in a way where it doesn't feel so static and stiff, right? That's one way of understanding edges. There's another way of understanding edges, which is a lot more traditional and closer to a traditional painting principle, which is it's about values, right? You create edges based on value relationships. So that's kind of where, if you have, say, an area where, let me turn this off. If you have an area where it's like sharing a similar value, say back here, you're going to probably get a natural edge. Like, let's say up here, you're going to get a natural edge because of the value relationships are so close together, right? That's another way of thinking about edges. But that's kind of my understanding of how I was taught edges. Is there's one that's very this is very active, like this is a very active edge control, and there's ones that are very passive, which is through the use of sharing or grouping certain values together, and you're gonna get this natural lost edge, right? Especially like on this rock, you see how there's the same values here. That is considered a natural lost edge because of the value relationship that it shares. So that's my really crappy explanation of edges. I think whoever actually does real painting, and I'm not a real like traditional painter, is most likely going to disagree with my philosophy or my understanding of edges. They're probably
Yeah.
like, yeah, this guy's full of shit, man.
Well, digital and traditional, I guess, are different after all. Um, what are from Rioma? What are some universal truths you have found observing our visual reality? How do you put these truths into practice in your art?
Wait, what are some universal truths?
Yeah, I mean,
Uh, I think
maybe,
I think I have a hard time understanding.
yeah, maybe, Rioma, if you want to like elaborate further, I'll come back to your question. I'm gonna ask another one. From Ratchet, how important is it to learn designing if my primary skill is in illustration? Um, concept art pieces look more uh, l- concept art pieces look more like detailed promo piece.
Like in terms
Mm,
of like it looks like marketing pieces.
I'm trying to understand this question. Um, I don't know. Maybe I would also ask Ratchet to uh, explain
Maybe
explain this question also a tiny bit better. Okay, um this one is pretty is more straightforward. So from NMD, it says you say you don't do traditional work. Why is that? Is it just personal preference? Would a beginning concept artist be missing out if they don't do traditional art?
I grew up not doing traditional art, mainly because I'm, or I guess traditionally I'm more of a pen and pencil type of guy on paper. I'm very afraid of mixing color, not because I think it's hard. Um, well, I think it's hard because I haven't done it. That's what it is. That's just that's just me. I don't think there's anything wrong with learning traditional. I would say learn it. I think I can see a lot of benefits from it, but um, I just it's my own personal weird quirk. Like I've never got into it. I just think I was never a painter when I started. And so the idea of having to like mix color was really scary to me, you know? And so I think I use digital tools as a way to kind of avoid or you know not do traditional. And I think maybe in the future, like maybe way later, I might start I might buy like an oil set and brushes and try to start mixing some colors around. Um, I don't know. It's a really good question. It's also like it's something that I have a I don't have I get a lot of like mixed I get a lot of mixed answers from like my friends and my peers, where you know like my friends who do a lot of traditional, they're like, you got to do it, man. It's gonna really change kind of the way you think about painting, and you know sometimes I'm like, oh shoot, really? Maybe I should. And then I get like other answers from other people who don't really paint traditionally, and you know they'll tell me something different, which is like, you know, they're like, well, look at the information. If it resonates with you cognitively, maybe you can still apply those principles in terms of in digital form, you know. Um, so I think there's truth to both, right? And it comes down to preference.
Awesome. One question from Artyom. It says, how can you improve in color? What should you focus on to practice in traditional materials, drawing, still lifes, or analog type of stuff, or what?
I think in terms of improving in color, I don't think nothing beats doing studies. I think that's some of the best way to get better at color, is by understanding, is by building that visual library, right? So that's, to me, that's my personal preference on that. Um, I think that you know, like there's a lot of other books out there too that's like really great resource for understanding color as well. So I would definitely look at like James Gurney, Color and Light. It's a great book on that. But I guess in terms of like the second part to that question, which is practicing, you know, traditional drawings and stuff, I think I think drawing from life, doing stuff like that, it does help. It's like whatever helps build visual library, right? So if you're drawing on your tablet, that's fine. If you're drawing on, in your sketchbook, like anything that's going to help continue to enrich your visual library is really going to be the goal. It's kind of like, it's going to be the most nutritious thing that you can do for yourself as an artist. So that's kind of what I recommend.
Nice. From Red, what is your approach for placing a character when painting a landscape?
I think it's all about story. It's all about like, providing some sort of narrative and context. I know sometimes it just feels like random. It's like, well, let's paint a character. I've been doing like these like monk paintings or painting with like the stick man. So sometimes if it's like far away, then you just want to make sure you're striking a good balance. But it's about story at the end of the day, right? So if you like put a character here, like, oh, the guy is sitting right on top of that log, and you want to place them in a way that helps serve your focal point, right? So if your focal point's here, but if you're placing your character like over here, that's not really helping because your focal point's here. So now you're like, wait, why is there a character over here? We should keep it where it's within the focal point. If the focal point's within this general area, then I would try to put a character that is in that general vicinity.
Yeah, and they always have to have a stick, right?
They always have to have a stick. If they don't, you fail.
Yeah, I think that's how it is. One question from a Trancer. It says, is your brainstorm bootcamp for beginners or it's an advanced one?
So anything that's related to just a lot of the painting classes, it's generally like, I would say it's intermediate, it's beginner to intermediate levels. I will say that, if you've never opened up Photoshop in your life, then it's probably not the best place to start. I would recommend maybe like a much more introductory to like a Photoshop painting class, but it's a really great place to start if you want to, kind of dive into a really light painting class and not have to spend like a whole ton of money. And also it's a really good, the boot camps are really good if you're just testing out, if you're just like, well, I just want to see what it's about, because you may or may not like it, and so that's kind of the main reason why we created those boot camps. Because, there's a lot of people who, like if you're signed up for an 8 to 10 week course, if you love it, that's great. But if you don't like it, then it's kind of a waste of time and money. So I think that the boot camps really kind of help avoid those kind of like traps, right?
Nice. And as you can see, John is a great teacher, so highly recommended. Yeah, sure.
There's a lot of really great teachers, from like, I mean, I talked about this in a podcast a couple weeks ago with my friends, and like, there's so much great stuff out there. Like, I would honestly start off with like Gumroads, like see what you guys like. First off, like, make sure you like the art style, and maybe the way they teach, and make sure that it resonates with you. I think that's a good place to kind of start off and plan. And then kind of follow, maybe where they teach. They might teach at certain institutions, or they might run like a private class or a mentorship, and then kind of go from there. And there's like all sorts of great teachers from like all over, from like, not only at Brainstorm, but also at like, CGMA, Learn Squared. Like, I have a lot of friends that teach at Learn Squared. CDA, Concept Design Academy, which is located in Pasadena. Great school. Also like Schoolism. Like, man, there's so many great teachers. And the thing is like, that's kind of where I would recommend for anyone who's looking for a great education, look at the teachers. The teachers is going to be a place to start, and make sure make sure you get a great experience and great interaction with those teachers, and then from there, like, slowly build up, you know, like then start looking around and seeing, like, you know, who else teaches in that same fashion or that same style. Okay, well, as I'm painting, what I'm doing here is, you can see I'm like just color picking these values and just trying to really mimic a lot of the colors within these values. You can see that I literally am, this is like my mask here, right? So I'm starting to just inject a lot of these colors and tones here to kind of get these colors in. And this is a way to quote unquote colorize your work without having to use like an overlay layer. You're literally redoing all of the values, like, or using the value structure you have in here, and you're basically injecting the colors inside. So I found this to be the easiest way to quote unquote colorize something, because yeah, colorizing it using like overlay and multiply, I personally haven't had a successful run at it. I know, like, I have other friends who are really good at that. I'm just not as skilled as they are. So I was kind of like, okay, I need something that's a little bit more like easier, and something where I can kind of revert back to like a black and white image to really help me influence and make, you know, like a much more to have a much more successful result. And so I've been using this technique. This has been working for me fairly well these past couple months, really.
Yeah, that's great. There was actually a question later on about that. You basically just answered.
Oh, cool.
From Ann Callow, it says, what are some words of advice you can give to a junior concept artist that basically started their first studio job?
Oh, okay. That's a good question too. I like that. So words of advice on anyone who's starting off, right? Be inquisitive. Be very humble. Okay, I think be also try to be hungry and try to learn as much as you can. And just know that, like, you know, it's a starting point. And so, like, I would say try to ask as many questions, try to be a team player, you know, because if you're showing that you actually care and that you want to learn, the people around you are going to really invest in you and want to they're going to want to help you even more, right? I've met a lot of young designers, young artists who, you know, who've started off a little bit like kind of where, you know, they're kind of like very, very successful student artists, and they went in and, you know, naturally you're going to be like, oh man, I'm freaking badass, you know, like all these old people don't know what they're doing, like move aside, you know, like let me show you how it's done. Like that kind of attitude is not really helpful, especially when you're working on a team. And the thing is, like, you're working with these people, like at the end of the day, you're working with people who like who you need to like see every single day, right? Who you need to interact with. And it doesn't matter about you as an artist. It matters about you as a person at a studio. Those are some things that I've seen go very, very bad for some students who, you know, who had a different attitude. So I would recommend, you know, just kind of going with a much more like humble and like yeah, like kind of like more open-minded attitude, and just try to learn as much as you can, because, you know, a lot of these veterans, they have like decades of experience, and there's so much that you can learn from them other than like what brush they use, right? You'll learn a lot about kind of like how studio politics work. You'll learn a lot about career. You'll learn a lot about problem solving. You'll also learn about things that you normally don't really think is important, like communication, organization, You might learn things about, you know, history and like all these things that, you know, maybe we didn't really care about or might have taken for granted before. You know, there's so much value to people at these studios, and you know, just kind of just make sure you kind of go about it in a way that benefits you and benefits your growth as an artist. So that'd be my recommendation.
Nice. That's another great answer. Let's see. One question from Rick. It says, what would you do to avoid getting burnt out from not hitting the mark we expect it to be? Like I guess the potential depression of not being accepted by your peers.
First, I would say honestly, like, get off social media. Like, that'd be my first thing. If I recall all the times that I got like just mentally burnt out because of something that I read, or because of like a certain statement that I saw, or like, you know, posts that I saw on like, you know, on Facebook or something, like I honestly wish I had the guidance to just be like, you know what, get off of social media and focus on things that you actually really enjoy, and just almost kind of block yourself out from all that noise, because it's just noise, man. Like, people like to naturally make a lot of noise, and so that's kind of the one thing that I would always advise, you know, my students, and also even myself. Like, when I'm feeling like overwhelmed, I'm like, oh fuck, man, like there's so much new stuff, new tutorials, and like awesome more Blender tools, and I'm like, dude, I'm so behind the curve. And you know, it's so easy to get caught up on all that, and you know, you can feel really down about yourself. So it's good to just kind of like break away from that and just kind of reset. Also, another thing about burnouts I want to talk about in regards to just working, you know, whether you're a student working or whether you're a professional, I think the thing that helped me is to not overdo it. Like, learn how to take healthy breaks, right? And learn to be a lot more disciplined with your time. I have like friends who are hardcore, and they'll just go 15, 16 hours of arting, right? Of just painting and doing all of this like hardcore production. And then later on, like, boom, it hits them like a hammer on their head, right? They're just like, holy crap, I'm so tired. So I think one of the things is that, you know, being in this industry, it's really a marathon. Like, you're in it for the long haul, man. So if possible, try to pace yourself, you know, try to give yourself time to kind of breathe and just kind of like reset or recharge those batteries. Also, another thing that helps too, if you want to be productive, okay, try to create really, I guess, like healthy habits. Like, get up like 30 minutes to an hour early. You know, I know this stuff sounds like really generic. It's like shit that you'll hear on like YouTube, like, get up early in the morning, start your day. But it's really true. Like, get up a little bit early in the morning. You know, start off by doing a personal piece, and that's what I did this morning. I honestly got up a little earlier, and I did like one painting for myself, and it's a shitty painting that I probably won't even post, but at least I was able to do something for myself, and it kind of at least created a really good rhythm in which that I'm most likely going to repeat tomorrow, and just keep on doing that over and over again, and you'll start to find yourself, you know, being productive. And also, you know, at least you're producing things and you're not like trying to cram it all into one, you know, like one day. So you're really just kind of pacing yourself.
That's another great answer, and I definitely agree that yeah, if you feel actually depressed, definitely get off social media and talk to, you know, real people.
Yeah, social media it's like really awesome, and it's also really shitty.
Yeah, totally. From Dan, this it says, when do you call something finished? Like, how do you call something finished?
That's a good question. I think that I always have like a visual art bar, because I think as artists we all can noodle and render something to death, right? So I usually have a visual bar where I'll pull up an image or a painting that I like. You know, 99% of the time it's not my own image, and I'll just go, I want to hit that mark, right? And then I also, in conjunction, I give myself a time frame. I say, like, I don't want to spend more than a couple days on this, and I probably shouldn't for the sake of time, for the sake of budgetary reasons, whatever it may be, whether it's like for studio reasons. But I usually try to set those basic guidelines so that I know when I'm close to being done or when I should call it being done, right? Those things have helped me to at least have a better measurement on my own progress. So yeah, I'd recommend doing something like that.
Nice. Oh, this is I like this question. It says, hey John, from Mo, it says, hey John, what's the secret for your positive vibe? You always seem chill and happy, which I believe helps you a lot. Pump out awesome work.
I'm negative as hell, man. I don't know, man. I have off days. Fuck, man. I think it helps to find like an outlet to vent. Gav knows this. Like I play games. Like if I'm just like, man, I'm all pent up and I feel like shit, I'll just I'll take a moment and I'll do something that's not art related. Because sometimes art pisses me off, man. Doing concept art, like it's just maybe sometimes your pieces aren't coming out great, or you just might have an off day. But there are a lot of times when I need to just vent, I'll try to go out and I'll either go out, take my dogs on like a long ass walk, or a lot of times, like if I'm in the room and I just need a quick breather, I'll honestly like switch it up. I'll play games. Like that's kind of my little escape. Is I'll play Counter-Strike, and I know that's
yeah, nice.
a hell of a violent game, but
yeah, John and I used to play Counter-Strike sometimes.
Yeah, no, don't play with Gav. He's insane. He's like crazy. He's like this typical like super crazy talented European, like one shot, one kill with an op and doesn't do a scope.
It's funny. Question from, yeah, I'm sure you do. Question from Flamer. How do you choose a certain aesthetic for your own personal works in terms of style and stylistic subject matter, if you happen to like way too many different things? That's funny.
A certain aesthetic, I'm assuming that's kind of like more like a design aesthetic, right? Not like not an art aesthetic.
Yeah, I read it that way too.
Yeah. Okay. Damn, that's a good question, because I totally feel you on that one. I think damn, yeah, because I like a lot of stuff too. Because sometimes, and I think it confuses me, because then like one day I'll like I'll just be on like a Ghost in the Shell binge. I'm like, oh, I really like that, and then I'll suddenly start watching Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, oh man, fantasy, and I'll start getting into that, right? So it confuses my taste. I'm like, what the hell? I think what I need to do is, if you're the type of person who gravitate towards liking a lot of different subjects, I think it's good to compartmentalize, right? Know what it is that you want to get into for the day. I know it sounds, again, a very prescriptive answer, because it's like, how do you do that? But it's one of those things where if I know that I'm going to be doing mechs, like robot designs, for a long time, I'm just going to look at nothing but robots, and I'm going to pull up all of my favorite robot references, and I'll just binge on that for a while, and I'll just go, okay, what are some of my favorite mech designs, and I have my own personal list, you know, both ranging from like, you know, comics, you know, manga, and you know, like my friends' works, you know, and you know, like Fausto Di Martini and David Levy, like to me, those guys do some of my favorite, like, you know, like sci-fi designs, and I'll just kind of use that and be like, yeah, this is what I want to get into. But I think on a normal base, like on a normal day where I'm just kind of you know, looking through all of my inspiration and all of my favorite folders per se, I try to make sure like I'm very clear about like what the goal is. Again, like it's very prescriptive. It feels very like robotic to say that, but it eliminates the whole factor of like trying to digest all of the things that you like in one day. Because again, your brain it needs to filter out what is helpful and what's, you know, what you're going to utilize, right? So, and it's not to say like to have less reference. I think that's not really a helpful answer, but it's like consolidate and try to figure out what reference is going to be helpful for you for that day. Hopefully that. I don't know if that answer really helped. Kind of, well, probably another confusing answer.
No, I think it made sense.
I don't know. What do you think, Jeff? Because you're like,
I mean, I think
and you do a lot of like, you handle a lot of stuff.
I think that like actually something I mentioned last time when Anis was a guest here too is that in my opinion, you like the way it works, at least it worked for me, and I think for a lot of people as well, is that you tend to first sort of copy or like sort of try to reproduce the style of someone you like, right?
Yeah.
So I personally like I remember that you know, like you remember when we were at Art Center and like I was telling again this last time too that everyone's kind of trying to copy Scott, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's fine to sort of copy someone you like in terms of style, design, or artistic choices because it means that they resonate with you. And the more and more you copy the person, the more you understand what makes them good, and the more better you get in general yourself. I think eventually you sort of naturally evolve into your own style. Eventually, it's just something that I don't think you can force. I don't think it's something that you'd say like, oh, I want to be like this designer, and then you know, like you sort of become that. I think you sort of copy the person, and then by copying other people, you understand what makes them good, right? In a way, sort of like I guess in illustration when you do studies, like you paint so much and then you can paint anything because you have so much you know, muscle memory and visual library in your head. And
right.
and I think for design it's basically the same, where if you copy, you know, things over and over and over from someone you like, eventually you sort of like you're copying this person, maybe you're practicing, you know, how to build other things. I guess now I'm thinking in 3D, but like if you're, you know, let's say you're modeling, you know, specific things, how to learn how to, I don't know, model guns or model props or whatever. And then on the side, you're trying to, I don't know, like, let's say you like, I don't know, Mike Nash, and you're trying to like copy how he does his crazy characters. You're probably not going to be able to do it right away. But if you keep copying and copying and copying, eventually, even if your style starts to kind of like you're starting to copy him, look like him, eventually in the longer run, I think you develop your own style, if it makes sense. I think it's something that I don't think people should be stressed about, especially if they're sort of, you know, learning or starting. I think it sort of naturally evolves over time.
Yeah, no, that's a good point to bring up. Yeah, I think to that point, I think when I first started really like getting into like this more traditional painting aesthetic, this look, is I really copied. I try to emulate Craig Mullins, Jamie Jones.
Right. Yeah.
And I started actually looking even more at like traditional artists like Richard Schmid, who I found to be, you know, just a breath of fresh air in terms of like, because it's not digital, and it forced me to like think, how can I use digital tools to emulate that kind of traditional look? And I think because I did it so much, it kind of it gets kind of locked into your memory bank, and you start to refer to a lot of the things that you studied. And it does, and you're right, Gab, it actually does become a part of your style, because that's in your brain.
Yeah. And then it evolves. I mean, now you have like, when I look at these paintings you post, I know that you made them exactly as you said. Like you start sort of like emulating someone, and then you sort of take from them, and then eventually kind of forges your own style throughout the time. Maybe the first painting like this you ever did was like way closer, maybe to say Jamie or Craig, right? But over time, you know. So I think it's normal. I think that it's normal to for everyone to try to copy masters after all.
Yeah, that's true.
Um,
That's a good point though. Like, yeah, I think starting off with like copying artwork that you really admire and like, and just try to get into it, and it builds kind of like a not only an appreciation, but it builds kind of like an understanding of like what it takes to get there. And then and again, like at the same time you're building that visual library, so it's pretty.
yeah, you learn a lot. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's see. From Emreo, I love to hear about making decisions that stray from the reference when doing studies like this.
So when I do studies like this, or as I'm kind of deviating away from the actual like image here on the reference image on the left, is that I always have to do a study first. Like that's number one priority. And again, it's just something that I've like told myself. I was like, I need to do a study first in order to get really acquainted with it. And if I do a successful study, then I know at least what it takes to get from point A to point B, right? I know what it takes to get here and what colors that I should be mindful of. So I have like having that visual library helps me to like prep and be prepared. And then from there, it's like, then I can go through that same process of like, making those same steps, but then now I'm starting to alter it. I'm starting to kind of like change some of the elements around, change the orientation, and then like build upon it, right? And so that's kind of what we're doing here. And so that's kind of the way I like to think about deviating away from from the original source, and creating my own decisions. Is I need to understand the original image by doing a study first, and then like I would say start making slight modifications to it. Try not to bite off more than you chew. And just like really change enough to where it feels heavily inspired by the photograph, but it's not entirely it's not an entire like perfect copy. That's kind of the way I like to approach it.
Nice. Definitely agree there too. Let's see. This is like a very peculiar question, but it says, just curious, how would you go about doing concept art for strategy games, like a campaign map?
Oh, I have no idea.
Well,
yeah, I have no idea. I don't think, because I've never worked on a strategy game. Yeah, sorry, I haven't. Yeah, just being really honest. I don't know, because I've never worked for a strategy. Like I've never worked for those types of companies before. I think a lot of it has to do with just kind of like the parameters of what is needed from the art director, whether it's like illustration or whether it's like yeah, like whether it's like box art or something. But I don't know. Yeah, I apologize.
yeah, and maybe also you might want to like look up maybe like artists, the concept artists that work at actual in-game at like places like Blizzard and XCOM or whatever, and all these games, the game companies that make strategy games, and see if you find specific concept art maybe that sorts of reflect what you're looking for, I think.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't really have a good answer for that one.
Okay, let's see. What is your daily schedule from Noor? What is your daily schedule? How do you balance the time spent on art and the time spent with your family?
Yeah, that's tricky, huh? Damn. it's a tricky one that I think everyone can resonate with, and you know, it's a struggle. I in general, when I work, I like to carve out time, obviously, not only for professional work, but for personal work. So here, I'll just kind of very quickly map out like what my schedule looks like. So obviously you have like a Monday through like a weekly chart. So I have like Monday, say Tuesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then we have like the weekend, right? Got like Saturday, Sunday. So generally, like there's this whole midsection, which I'm going to generalize it for everyone, but you know, it's either going to be work related or school related. So a lot of this stuff here, especially for the actual week, this is all like allocated to like your day, right? So this is what I got. So for me, this is allocated towards work. Oops. So my work day generally starts around like 9 a.m. and it goes to about 6 p.m., right? It's like a standard work day. But before 9 a.m., I try, keyword try, I try to get up at like 6 a.m. That gives me 3 hours to do whatever the hell I want, right? Watch YouTube videos, watch, you know, Gumroads, practice Blender, or do personal art. So in this time frame, I utilize this to do a lot of personal stuff. Always. And most of the time, I usually do warm-up paintings in this time frame. And it's honestly kind of like where I like mentally need to wake up because I'm all groggy and I'm like, ugh. And so it allows me to kind of get into this like rhythm before my workday starts. And then the workday starts, right? It's like, boom, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. You know, there's like meetings and stuff, and I'm sure we're all dealing with the same stuff. There's this little sliver of time here during lunch. Since, you know, we're all work from home and unfortunately we can't like hang out with our coworkers and friends, I do use this time to do personal work as well. Like I'll spend like maybe 30 to 45 minutes or 30 minutes to an hour picking away at either personal work or starting a new one. So I try to utilize my lunch during that time. This is not always constant, by the way, but I do try to remind myself, hey, I do have that time frame. And now around from like 6 p.m. after that day ends, I have just a dedicated family time. Like I try not to mess with that because, you know, I'm a family man. I have a daughter. So I usually have like from 7 to around like 10:30 when my daughter goes to sleep. I try to just dedicate this time to like family dinner and, you know, like I try not to abuse this time with like more art because, you know, it's unfair. It's unfair to my wife, my daughter, you know, and, you know, like I have to keep a healthy balance. So from this period, like I don't do any art, obviously, but it's from this period. Again, we got this like extra time frame. Now I do sleep a little bit late and sometimes, and that's going to affect when I wake up, but I generally I will sleep around like 1 a.m. Sometimes I'll sleep around 2 a.m. If I sleep at 2 a.m., I'll wake up at 7. But if I sleep at like 1 a.m., I'll wake up at 6. So I need at least 5 hours of sleep. But in this time frame, from roughly like 11 to like 1 a.m., I get another 2 hours, right? And this is more personal time. So that's kind of the way I've been utilizing my schedule on a weekly basis. Now, on Saturday and Sunday, this is all dedicated, you know, for me teaching. And I still do the same thing. In the morning, I get up really early, you know, and I will do personal work. I'll probably get up a little bit later, but I'll try to squeeze in at least an hour. But I'll do personal work Saturday and Sunday. And then I run a brainstorm mentorship both Saturday, Sunday until about 2 p.m., from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then the rest of this time, it's all really just for me, this is all family time. Like I try not to mess with that. But this is kind of the way I set my schedule. I do apologize. It's all like really poorly organized, but that's kind of the way I try to be consistent and create healthy habits, right? And this is what it's all about. And a lot of people think, you know, they're like, man, how is it possible you're doing these paintings? Like, it's not possible. It is possible. You just have to carve out time. You have to actively say, I'm going to get up early to put in like, you know, 30 minutes to an hour. And then eventually that 30 minutes to an hour go up to like an hour to hour and a half, or maybe even 2 hours. And you can actually get a lot done. And what's happening here, if you look at it, within a week span, you guys, I'm allocating about 15 to 20 hours of personal development per week, you know? And so that's kind of the way I've been balancing things out.
I just want to say hi. Hello, this is David.
Hi, David.
David Levy, how are you?
Hello. So good to hear your voice, man.
It's very good to see you paint. It's been such a long time.
My
It's
God.
a pleasure.
Oh my God. I miss you so much.
I miss you tons too.
Oh my God, dude.
I miss our speed painting lunches.
David is a speed painting god, and
I don't practice anymore.
Whatever.
I'm too much into 3D now.
It's just in your DNA. You don't need to practice. You just have that
I wish.
switch. No, I always tell my students, like, I miss our speed painting and obsession, like, and Craig Mullen, like, analysis, you know, like, sessions that we used to have. Like, what brush did you use, man?
I know, we would do like experiments, try 500 different versions of the same brush to see if we were able to imitate 1/100th of his talents, you know.
Yeah, just like one corner, and like I felt like, and you did so much like R&D, like when you figure something out, I was like, oh my God, we're closer.
Yeah, but it's like impossible to be even close to him. And it's just like that. It's just, yeah, but it was tons of fun. Anyway, I just want to say hi. I keep watching you, but I won't bother you anymore. Just want to.
Dude, it's good to hear your voice, brother.
It's a real pleasure to watch you paint. Really, as always.
Man, dude, that's awesome. I love David Levy.
Yeah, and David is also. We're gonna have David do the same that you're doing, like not too far in the future, whenever David's schedule allows. So.
He's such a badass. He's like one of those guys. Again, like I was lucky enough to work with David Levy, Steve Messing, Fausto, Ben Proctor, Dylan Cole, Joe Pepe. There's like all these amazing artists that are on there, man. And like Jonathan Bruby, Dick Gendro, Seifel, Anise. They like got so overwhelming because of like all the talent in the room. But it was so cool because, like, again, I grew up, you know, collecting the design studio books, and you know, I had a lot of like David's like his I guess Noman DVDs at the time, and his art books, and it was so cool to just like see him in action, because I think it was one of those things that for me, as when I was a student, I had this perception. I was like, this guy's some like crazy badass like French dude who's like, in my brain, he's painting at like 600 miles per hour. And then when I met him, he was painting at 600 miles per hour, and it was awesome. I was like, yes, the prophecies were true.
whatever.
It was, dude, it's freaking awesome though. But it's I guess one of the other things too, I wanted to piggyback off of, there was another comment that a student made about when you're a professional, or when you're starting off as a professional, what are some things to keep in mind? Be inquisitive, right? And I know I said this before, but like, ask questions, because again, like, if it wasn't for guys like David, Steve Messing, and like, you know, Fausto, who we were very close. We shared an office together. I learned so much just being around those guys, you know, and it helped me to really level up, and help me to take my own art education seriously, just because I saw these veterans, they don't fuck around, man. Excuse my language, but they don't mess around. And seeing, like, I'm like, at the time I was, you know, like in my mid to late 20s, and just seeing these guys who are working in the industry, the top of their game, and they were still working as if they were, like, this was like their first job. They were cranking, you know, 12, 15-hour days, and it's like, it was such a reminder. I was like, you know what? Don't be cocky. I don't know shit. These guys are working their ass off. It's time to pay attention, time to learn, time to take notes, you know? And so I would just watch these guys, like, constantly push themselves and level up, and it made me understand. I was like, okay, they are in a league of their own, but it made me understand why they are the best, you know? And this is true for, like, all those guys, you know, like, that you know, everyone admires. Like, they work their ass off. It's not, I don't believe in talent. I believe in hard work. And that's when I saw it. I saw it in front of my eyes. I was like, damn, these guys, they work for all of the skill that they basically built up. Anyways,
yeah.
any other questions?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Let me go back to this one. Okay, so Ratchet clarified their question. I guess he was asking about, he said he's designing stuff like props, a bigger part of the work in game studios, because we all see in portfolios of other artists, there's a lot of beautiful keyframes.
Yeah. I guess to answer or to kind of piggyback off of that statement, when you're a junior artist, like, a lot of your responsibilities is going to be to do a lot of the support work, you know, and that's everyone has to go through that. You have to earn your stripes. But it's a great opportunity, because during that time, you know, you're doing something that's relatively on the low risk side. So, you know, like, I kind of take that as, like, a privilege to just kind of be a part of the team, learn, and you know, to contribute, even if it's something as small as a prop. It's such a great place to kind of start pushing your designs and start to level up and ask questions to some of your seniors and leads on, like, what their process is, you know. I think one of the things that I regret, and I really don't have any regrets, you know, in my career, but the one regret that I do have, you know, I'll share a little segment, is I got into a studio over in Universal, and I loved every aspect of it. I loved working with the people at Universal, and I was under a studio called Blind Wink with a director named Gore Verbinski. I loved it. The only, I think the only problem that I had was I felt like I got in a little too early, meaning the responsibilities of what was required was way above my skill set, and I really I was like, oh my God, it's the first time where I was like, okay, I wish I had a lead or a senior to just kind of guide me through this so that I can learn. And honestly, like, that was just it was such a stressful time where I was just not ready and not prepared to have that kind of responsibility, you know? And they did appreciate me as an artist, but I was just not, like, technically, I was just not there. Right? And experience-wise, I was not there. Communication-wise, I was not there either. You know, I was still learning how to organize and communicate my thoughts to, you know, non-artists and producers and stuff. And so, you know, like, it was just such a rough patch, like, during that time. And I was, like, getting frustrated because I didn't know what I was, like, I was trying my best, and I was like, oh, man, like, they're not understanding what I'm trying to do, and sometimes I'm like, and I'm trying to learn while doing the job, and it was really challenging for me. And so, you know, I was really happy to be a part of a production where I got to kind of start start off really simple, you know, like start off with training wheels and then like level up, you know, slowly build the experience, because when I built that experience, it built a lot more confidence and maturity in my work as an artist, and I knew exactly how to navigate going forward. And so I gotta say, like, a lot at that time in my period, it was like a really good educational time frame.
Nice. Actually, I remember when you were working there.
Yeah, dude, I struggled a lot, man. Oh my God.
Yeah, I remember very well. That project too.
Yeah, it was like, you know, like, and when you're starting off and you're young, you're like, yeah, man, this is awesome. And, you know, but I was at the same time, I was way over my head. I was like, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. Like, this is like, oh my God, I should have, you know, I wish I had a lead, or I wish I was, you know, doing something that was a lower risk assignment. You know, I wish I was like started off with like props, and then I can slowly graduate my way up, because it was like I felt like I just got put into the deep end at that time, and it was not their fault of their own. It was, you know, again, it was my own ambition. I was like, yeah, I could fucking do it. I can do it. And then that's what I thought, and I wasn't able to do it to the level that I wanted to, and so it was
Right.
a really rough learning experience for me as a beginner. Now, if I were to go back now with the knowledge that I have, hell yeah, I can do it. You know, absolutely. You know, like without a doubt. Like I feel confident now, but you asked me 10 years ago, like I would have given you a completely different answer.
Right. Let's see. From Andre, I guess. I say, if you could meet any artist from the past, one-on-one meeting, who would it be?
Any artist from the past?
Yeah, I guess someone who's probably deceased, if I had to guess.
John Berkey, for sure.
Oh,
John Berkey, a huge fan, always will be. I think I would love to kind of, you know, talk shop with him and just be like, you know, like what was his like design process? What was he into? He has such a unique taste, you know, and he's such an amazing illustrator, but designer as well. Like the dude he was doing some stuff that was way ahead of its time, and it still is, in my opinion. Like, you look at his stuff, it's amazing. I mean, I think like a slightly more you know, common answer would be like, yeah, you know, I'd love to meet like John Singer Sargent, you know, and like kind of know like, you know, what his personality was like. I was fortunate enough to meet, you know, Craig Mullins, you know, at like Lightbox, and also you know, I was able to go visit him at in Hawaii. You know, so I feel like, you know, I was like, you know, those types of artists, like I had on my bucket list, and I was like, yeah, I finally got to meet them. So awesome. But what's great about meeting these artists is you get to understand, it really puts a much more, a better perspective in terms of like how they think, how they view life, and really just, you know, like you get a better insight, I guess. That's really what I'm trying to say, is you get this insight in terms of like why their art is the way it is. And it all started off with meeting them in person and asking questions, and you get to see how they're processing that answer. And almost it feels like you're watching them mentally paint an image for you, you know? Because I would ask like simple questions like, how would you paint a tree? And someone like Craig Mullins would be like, well, that's an interesting answer. Like, what is a tree? And I'm like, what? And so, you know, it's just like some of those interactions really allowed me to appreciate him not only as an artist, but him as a person, and just the genius that he exudes, you know. Yeah, it's awesome. I know that kind of slightly tangent from that question, but
It's still relevant. So one question from Daniel. He says, I'm getting ready to move to California soon, and along with Brainstorm, do you have any advice for pursuing online and in-house, I guess, in-person education in Pasadena and LA area?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, like LA is a hotspot, you know? I mean, I think right now, just due to the whole situation, you could probably just coast from wherever you're living. So, you know, I would say, you know, don't be in a rush to come now, or it's not necessary because everything is online. But if you do come here, yeah, there's a lot of great classes and resources, especially in the LA area. There's a lot of great schools that are locally held, and so, you know, Brainstorm obviously being available. We are moving more towards online due to, you know, the current situation, and we want to make sure that we're being safe and accessible to everybody across the world. But there's like really good schools outside of our school that are physical, and you know, Concept Design Academy is definitely one of them, and I've spoke about them before. There's something there. I studied there for many years when I was a student, and I absolutely love the facility that Kevin Chen and Estelle that they manage, like really great classes. They have great teachers, like probably some of the best, and you know, you know, like that's a great great school to study at. Also, let's see here, what else is like physically available? I mean, other than the fact that there's like a lot of artists that live in Southern California, like, you know, I know there's like occasional art meetups that pop in and out here and there. Like those are actually really cool to go to, because then you can meet the people that you follow on Facebook, you know, and everyone's generally really chill, really nice. So, yeah, but again, if to answer this person's question, is if you are studying and you're not going to like an accredited school, like, you know, like I think you have a lot of options, a lot of, like, a ton more than you did like even like 2-3 years ago. You know, you got like Schoolism, you got like all these places that are amazing. I'm still a huge fan of like designing your own curriculum, and I know that's tricky, but I always like to kind of, you know, cherry pick and like learn from, like, you know, my friend Jama's, you know, Blender tutorials. Like, he's amazing. And then slowly from there, like, then I'll kind of look like who else does something similar, and who else, you know, do those people also teach? Because, you know, you also want to get, you know, different types of perspective, you know, just to see, like, you know, what resonates, and also like maybe they have a slightly different approach to things, and that's a really healthy thing to do as well when you're learning.
Yeah. One question from Mojang. How do you go about set dressing scenes in concept art? Are you thinking about the elements compositionally or narratively? You know, I guess in a narrative way.
I think when it comes to set dressing, it's very specific. It's always more narrative driven than it is like composition. I think composition is it's like a point of view. It's a camera point of view. So I would say, you know, think about the actual layout first, or think about the actual elements that are in your space first, and then think about the camera that's going to best capture the moment, right? So I like to think about it like in a very practical sense of like set dressing, and really trying to understand, like if I was decorating a room, like, okay, where does the bed go? Where is the walls? You know, where are the curtains, and etc. Right? And then really build up from there.
Nice. Let's see. Guys, by the way, I'm sort of like skipping questions where John has already answered, so that, you know, we kind of don't go over some of the same stuff. One question from Tabiso is, how do you generally handle communicating when you get tasks that are outside of your wheelhouse? Do you try to prep your AD client for the results, not necessarily being at the same level of everything else you normally do?
Wait, can you repeat that question one more time?
So I guess he's asking, like, what happens if you get assigned a task from like an art director or a client that is like very outside of your wheelhouse? He says, how do you prepare them to the idea that maybe your work does not meet the same quality bar that you normally have for the stuff that you normally do? I guess that's his question.
Yeah, that's a good question too. Here's the thing. I mean, if you are up for the challenge, then I would say like, yeah, you know, ask them if you know, if they can allocate X amount of days or time for you to really dive in and investigate. Because you know, you'll get requests like, oh, can you do this style? And it's kind of like it's slightly out of your aesthetic, you know. So someone who does more like, you know, photorealistic stuff, you know, if you get an assignment that's like, oh, can you do something that's more painterly? You know, you might get that from your art director. And, you know, you can see that as an opportunity of like, yeah, it's out of my wheelhouse, but like, you know, I would love to try. The way I would approach that is just let them know like, hey, this is not normally what I normally do, but I'm going to need X amount of time, X amount of days or weeks in order to really get into the zone. Now, if you're working for a freelance client, it's a little trickier because, again, it's very sensitive to budget and how much time is available. Normally, if it is something that is on the freelance side and they ask for something that is slightly out of my own expertise or my style, like I probably wouldn't take on that job. But if it's at like a studio where you know, my art director is like, hey, we got this new style. I know, you know, I don't know if you do this, but we need to do this right now. This is what we need to accomplish within the next X amount of, you know, weeks or months. Then I'll ask, you know, I'll give them kind of like a heads up, like, hey, this is a little bit out of my own comfort zone, but I'm up for the challenge. I just need to really kind of you know, address and let everyone know, like, hey, let's just kind of reset everyone's expectations. Like, this is going to be a little bit of a learning curve for me, and then we'll basically you know, we'll nail and lock the style, but it's going to take a little bit of a slight educational period.
Let's see. Okay, so yeah, I totally agree. You should definitely not get onto something if you feel like you can do it all. By the way, definitely don't do it.
Yeah.
Let's see. From Tomoki, if my art skills are good enough to find a job, can a company hire me if you're, I guess, okay, he's asking if his skills are good enough to get a job, but what about if he has like not a good enough English?
Oh, that's tricky, because I mean,
yeah,
you know, you're going to need to communicate with them, right? So you're going to want to make sure that you're able to communicate. I know that's tricky for especially international people. Like, you might be aesthetically and technically really, you know, like basically approved, or, you know, that you might be able to do the job. But a big part of being an artist as well is not just painting pretty pictures, but is communicating, right? So if you have trouble communicating, that's something that needs to get resolved. That is a big part of the job as well.
Yeah, I actually just want to add something to that, is that, like, you know, I hire a lot of people throughout the year, and I had, like, last year I've actually tried to hire, you know, you've all seen like some of these like amazing, for instance, like there's like these crazy Chinese concept artists, they're like super talented, right? That do these like amazing paintings and like amazing designs, and I've actually reached out to like a couple of them last year because I wanted to hire them, and basically, like, it was clear they like spoke no English at all. Like their email back to me was like a Google Translate, completely broken, super hard to understand. And so, like, that's what John said. It's like, you can't, like, even if they were like the best person in the universe, you can't work with them because, like, it doesn't matter. I can't have a conversation with them explaining what I want or what they would need to change, and you know, on a daily basis. So that's really important. Like, you can't be hired just because you're amazing, basically.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is, like, I kind of look at the other way around. Like, let's say a company outside of the United States wanted to hire me, and they asked me like, oh, do you speak Mandarin, or do you speak like Russian or something, or like Korean? And if I don't, but that's part of like a base requirement, then I'm most likely not going to be fit for the job, right? So I see it.
Yeah.
I see it both ways.
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
yeah, like
yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I've experienced that too, where you know, like I I've had I've had interactions with other studios outside of the United States where you know, like they wanted to work with me and they were like, "Oh my God, you know, we'll just try to make it work," you know, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's awesome." It was very difficult in terms of communication because when I got feedback, I had a hard time understanding what they wanted exactly because you know, I didn't speak that native language, and you know when they hired a translator, the translator did a had a tough time translating a lot of the specifics questions that I had. So it was just a really it was a really awkward experience because and it had nothing to do with, the thing is it had nothing to do with painting. It had nothing to do with skill. It had to just do with like communication, and it was weird because I was like, man, it's just image making. But that's when I realized I was like, holy shit, communication is key. Like as
Yeah.
much as we are in the field of like communicating and painting, but you know the end goal is really to we are part of a bigger service, and you know the final product isn't just your amazing painting. It's going to be to help guide other divisions and other departments in the studio, and so that all that stuff needs to be accounted for.
Absolutely. And by the way, the way you said is completely true. The other way around is like, you know, when there's people that say want to go work in like a Japanese game company, but like they only speak English. It's like, well, if you want to work there, you have to speak the language, right? So
Yeah,
it absolutely goes both ways.
yeah.
Um,
All
let's
right.
see.
So I think I have time for maybe one more question because I do
Okay.
have up here, and
Yeah, we're gonna wrap it up. Okay, let me see. Let me then scroll through all of them, and I'm gonna pick like an interesting one. Give me a second then. By the way, John, thanks so much for doing this. Well, I'm selecting the. I'm kind of going through to pick
oh yeah, of course.
the last one.
Um, I can share this PSD too if anyone
Yeah,
wants.
yeah, it'd be
So
great. We can put it on the channel for the streams if people wanna. If people can open it.
I try to make it very like formulaic too, so you can see like 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
Um,
Right.
you guys can at least like follow or understand like what all this stuff means. So
I mean, there's like some questions again about colors and painting shapes that I think John has actually sort of answered before. So to all the people asking those, I think if you then rewatch the beginning of this, I think you can find it there. I guess like we can also go like super quick ones. Like one guy's asking, do you always use the color picker when you do these studies? Like do you use the color picker?
yeah, when I do studies, I always do color picker. I'm not confident to make my own colors, especially in the beginning phase. So I always use color picker to kind of get the colors, and then from there, like once I feel like I'm at a better place, then I'll start to kind of make my own arrangements. But that's just me. Like again, that's not like I don't think that's like you know like I wouldn't recommend like hey like only color pick or hey only do this. Like I would say do what's comfortable to you. And then and then if you want to break out of that, then I would say try to mix or make your own colors. I don't really do that too often because I'm always experimenting and I'm always trying to see if there's other ways to kind of create different colored moods. So but yeah, I always start off with like color picker.
Nice. Okay, so this is I found this would be the last question then. It says about your routine. It says let's say that you sit down for an hour and see what you can get done in that hour. Say if you don't finish the next day, would you start something totally new, or would you carry sort of that task over until you're done?
I usually carry that task over until I'm done. So I have a lot of pieces that I usually kind of go back to. So like if I started something on Monday, then I'll try my best to go back to it, until it's finished. Like I'll like slowly pick away at it, So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll use this thing too, you guys. It's called the color lookup. This is awesome. I like treat this as my Instagram filter. So you turn this on. It's under adjustments, and you go under all these little things, and then you just start going through. You're like, oh well, Instagram, right? And then you basically go here, and then you can actually put this not on normal mode, but put on color mode, so it doesn't mess with your values, and then just kind of go through all these different color modes, and you can see like which color arrangements you like. Actually, like that's pretty cool, right? So you can try different styles and tones, like whatever resonates with you. And so like it kind of adds a little extra bump, and then it comes with a mask, so you can like paint out if anything got like too heavily affected by that color lookup, so you can like do stuff like this. It's pretty fun. All right.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, John. By the way, do you also want to tell, as we wrap it up, you want to tell, you can say whatever you want, but also don't forget to, plug all of where people can follow you, tell us about your school, basically tell us all of the good info.
Oh, dude, the shameless plug, man.
Yeah, the shameless plug part, yes.
Well, first off, thanks for watching and taking the time to join us today. I do teach. I'm a teacher at Brainstorm School. So if you guys want more, if you guys liked kind of what you saw and you like this type of workflow, be sure to check out brainstormschool.com. But I would also highly recommend, check out a lot of the other online schools as well, like Schoolism, CGMA, Learn Squared, and also Concept Design Academy. Really dive into those schools, and specifically the instructors that are teaching there. There's like all these gems everywhere. But yeah, if you guys want to join me at Brainstorm, we are open at registration. I believe we'd start school in the first or second week of September. So yeah, if you want to get your learn on, join us, and yeah, hopefully I can see you there. But otherwise, thanks for coming to the CG Core live event. I'll be more than happy to do this again for Gav. So yeah, let me know, you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. And you can follow John also on Instagram. His art is at jparkedart. And he also posts all the time on Facebook. He's on ArtStation. He's everywhere too. So make sure to follow him. He basically pumps these amazing paintings on a daily basis, which is kind of insane to witness. So definitely don't want to miss on the inspiration every day. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Let me just end the stream again. Thanking so much, John, for the time that he has spent with us this morning. We'll make sure to have him again. And lastly, just like I did last stream, I'm just going to let you guys know that next week, not this Saturday, but the 15th of August, the next stream, the next guest is going to be Jama. So it'll probably be on the same time again. We'll make the announcement next week, and we'll probably do something very similar. He's going to be painting, taking questions and whatnot. So I'll see you guys again in basically in about 10 days or so.
Yeah, don't miss that one.
Yeah. So again, right. Thank you so much, John. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks, John.
All right, thank you. Bye,
guys. Bye.